The city was still sleeping when the women left. Jerusalem in those early hours before dawn had a particular kind of quiet, not peaceful, but hollow, the kind of silence that follows catastrophe. The stone streets were cool underfoot, and the air smelled of olive wood smoke drifting from somewhere distant, and of something else too, the lingering heaviness of a city that had witnessed something terrible and hadn't yet recovered. It was the first day of the week, Sunday, by our reckoning, 3 days after the world had come apart. Mary Magdalene walked at the front of the small group. She had been one of the last to leave Golgotha on Friday afternoon, had watched with her own eyes as the soldiers confirmed what no one wanted to believe. And she had watched from a distance as Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus carried the body of Jesus to the garden tomb, wrapping him in linen cloth with 100 pounds of spices, laying him inside the carved rock as the Sabbath pressed close at their heels. There had been no time to properly anoint him, no time to do what love required. So now, in the thin gray hour before sunrise, she and the other women were going back. They carried spices. They carried grief. They carried the quiet, desperate need to do something, anything, when everything else was already done and lost. They didn't yet know that the question they were carrying wasn't who would roll the stone away. The question was whether death was the last word. The tomb had been sealed with intention. Matthew's Gospel tells us that the chief priests and Pharisees had gone to Pilate the very day after the crucifixion, the Sabbath itself, and asked him to secure the tomb. They remembered, even if the disciples had forgotten in their grief, that Jesus had said he would rise on the third day. They called it a deception. They feared the story wasn't over. So Pilate gave them a guard, a unit of Roman soldiers, trained and armed, and they sealed the stone with an official seal and set the watch. Think about what that means. On one side of that stone, the weight of Roman authority, military power, the religious establishment of an entire nation. On the other side, silence, linen wrappings, stillness. The women didn't know about the guards. They were thinking about the stone. It was enormous. The Gospels make a point of noting that. And they were asking each other as they walked, who will roll the stone away for us? It is such a human question. Practical, worried. The kind of thing you ask when you're walking towards something painful and you're trying to focus on logistics, because the grief is too large to look at directly. Mary Magdalene had loved Jesus with everything she had. He had freed her. The Gospel of Luke tells us she had been tormented by 7 demons before Jesus healed her, and what that means in the full, awful weight of it is hard to imagine. She had followed him from Galilee. She had supported his ministry. She had stood at the cross when almost all the men had fled. And now she was walking through the pre-dawn dark with spices in her arms and a crack running through the center of her world. The other women felt it too. Mary, the mother of James, Salome, Joanna, they had all seen. They had all stayed. And now the staying required one more act of faithfulness, to anoint a body that no longer breathed, to honor a man who had told them the kingdom of God was near, and who was now 3 days in the ground. There is no rushing through that kind of grief. You feel the weight of it in every step they took down those streets. The spices in their hands. The question about the stone. The absolute, crushing finality of Friday still pressing down. They had almost no hope, and they were walking toward it anyway. Then the earth moved. Matthew's account describes it with a kind of controlled thunder, a great earthquake, and an angel of the Lord descending from heaven like lightning, his clothing white as snow, rolling back the stone and sitting on it as though it weighed nothing at all. The guards, the Roman soldiers, the ones with training and weapons and the full authority of empire behind them, shook with fear and became, Matthew says, like dead men. But by the time Mary Magdalene arrived at the tomb, the earth had settled again. What she found was the stone rolled away. The entrance open. She didn't understand yet. She ran. Back to the city, back to Peter and John. And the words that came out of her mouth were not words of resurrection. They were words of panic. Asterisk. They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. Asterisk. Peter and John ran. John outran Peter and reached the tomb first, but stopped at the entrance. He looked in. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Something held him at the threshold. Then Peter arrived, and Peter being Peter went straight inside. He saw the linen wrappings. He saw the cloth that had been around Jesus' head, not thrown aside, not unwrapped in haste, but folded, laid carefully to the side. That detail, That single, quiet detail. This was not a theft. This was not chaos. Something deliberate had happened here. John followed Peter inside, and the Gospel of John says simply, he saw and believed. They went home, still trying to understand. But Mary stayed. She stood outside the tomb weeping, and in her grief, she bent down and looked inside. And there were two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been, one at the head and one at the feet. "Woman," they said to her, "why are you weeping?" "Because they have taken away my Lord," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." She turned around, and there was a man standing behind her. She thought he was the gardener. He said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" She said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will take him away." And then, one word, Mary, the way he said her name. She knew. She turned fully toward him and said in Aramaic, Rabboni, teacher. And everything that had broken open on Friday began, in that moment, to be made whole. Lean back and hold this story quietly for a moment. What happened in that garden on Sunday morning was not simply a miracle inserted into history like a footnote. It was, if it is true, and billions across 2,000 years have staked everything on the claim that it is, the hinge on which all of human meaning swings. It answered the oldest, darkest question our species has ever asked. Is death really the end? But notice how the answer